how we do one thing is how we do everything. We're living according to our values. We're more in flow. We're more in ease, and we're healthier.
Our default pattern is a healthy person. Once you think that you're in flow, you're not in flow anymore.
We have language, behaviors, actions that pull us away from feeling our emotions. A symptom is a beautiful sign that our body's speaking to us.
What's up, guys? Welcome to The Strength Connection. I'm your host, Michael Kurkowski. Thank you so much for joining me. All right, so it's hard for me to introduce Dr. Amy Baker rationally. Yeah, she's a doctor of pharmacy. She's a leadership and intimacy coach, but her message and passion she has towards health and life goes beyond these labels. So the best way I can describe her is she's the doctor we need more of. I've been fortunate to hear Amy speak and meet her as well, and listening to her message about the pharmaceutical industry and what made her transition into a more holistic approach, I know I had to have her on the show. So I'm gonna leave the intro there just to say, I hope you get as much out of this conversation as I did. So with that, we'll get right to it. If you like this episode, you wanna show the podcast some love, please rate and review it wherever you're listening, and don't forget to subscribe. You can catch all new episodes that are dropped every week. All right, thanks so much, guys. Let's get on with the show. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, Dr. Amy Baker, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Well rested, happy to be here.
Absolutely, I heard you've been a busy woman over the last couple of weeks, kind of going around quite a few spots. Yeah.
South by Southwest in Austin.
Yeah, you're just telling me about. I got to look even more into that South by Southwest, but I know that seems like an incredible time, and I know you just got back from that. Honestly, I feel almost like an embarrassment of riches being able to connect with you. I've heard you speak like twice in a mastermind group, and then got a chance to meet you a few weeks ago at the Meta Summit in Texas, which was an unbelievable event. So kind of fun, just very small, intimate. Everybody had a great energy there. So I really appreciate you taking the time and jumping on.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. So your approach was so interesting. Being a doctor, being in pharmaceuticals, and kind of hearing your message, and then getting a chance to meet you. I can tell that you're a person that practices what they preach. I think so many of us, like we know the messages, we know the things that we hear about, the medical system and stuff, and we want to do all these things, but it's almost like, how do I actually do it? And I just saw that you're somebody that really changed your approach, really went about it in a way that you felt, most connected to. And that's why I thought it'd be a great conversation to have. So to kind of kick this off, we'd love to just kind of know, what was it about the medical field, kind of going into being a doctor? What inspired you to want to get into that field?
Yeah. So I am a doctor of pharmacy. I'm just not practicing right now. And it's so strange. Like, I felt I let myself down as my first dream of being a ballerina. I was, but for some reason I thought because I didn't become a soloist in a company that I had let myself down or something. So my next dream was to get a terminal degree, meaning a doctorate. Why? I don't really know. I think to shut my parents up, because they wanted me to go to college versus doing what I really loved. So you see a pattern already, right?
Yep.
When I tried to follow my path, they were like, oh no, we're not going to give you money. So I was like, all right, fine. I'll follow the path. I'm going to get a terminal degree so that they can shut up.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to be a physician. I looked at PhD, MD, and I applied to pharmacy and med school at the same time. I decided I wanted to go clinical and help people in health, because health is very important to me and always has been. And I say it's a lot like the relationships I've had in the past, where medical school didn't take me, pharmacy did. So I went to pharmacy school, not actually believing in it. Dis-ease state management is something that made me want to puke and still does. I don't believe that that's how we take care of people. That's not health. Yet I went into the field. I made the best of it. I went into leadership, as I always do. I don't regret it, because I got to really see what health isn't at a deep level. So I think you were asking kind of how I went into that. So that's really how I ended up in pharmacy.
Yeah, it's interesting.
to be really honest.
100%. Well, it's funny. I kicked on it with the ballet. My girlfriend's a dance teacher and a ballet teacher, and had the same dream of it. And it's hard to ask somebody like, what is it about dance? Because it's such like a deep emotional thing. It's different than a lot of other kind of physical things, it seems. So dance seems like it's just one of those things that, yeah, like that dream is real for people.
Yeah. It was my first true love. Mm-hmm. I didn't need a human. I felt like, yeah, I just needed awesome. An empty studio, music, and the mirrors and myself.
Yeah. So moving forward, so now, I mean, after you got your degree, now you're working in the pharmacy world with it. Did you feel right off the bat that there was something that wasn't aligning with you, or did it kind of come gradually down the line of like, this is not where I'm supposed to be? Yeah,
it came gradually. I mean, there's a part of me, I'm sure, that always knew, but I just shoved it aside because I was very successful. You know, I'd get into leadership and then feel better about myself. But there was about 4 years. So I left in August of 21. So about 4 years before that, I did a backpacking trip where it was just such a soulful experience. And I realized I had fallen asleep in my life. And what I would do would like binge and purge. I'd binge on these soul-filling experiences, like gateless riding and like Qigong retreats and these trainings that seemed very distant from what I was doing in the business and science and, you know, like kind of hardcore, I say man's world, but like just very straight and narrow professional life. And it'd be like this binge purge cycle, which is like the eating disorder that I worked on for so many years.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, let's fill up and then it would drain out. So for about 4 years, I was in that cycle. And just feeling my vitality drain little by little, and also losing trust in my ability to live the life I truly wanted. Because I knew there's part of me that was like, I know this isn't working for me, but I don't know how to get out. I got paid really well. I had a lot of autonomy, 8 weeks of PTO. It was like the golden handcuffs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I named that because it wasn't overnight. It took me 4 flipping years. And, is there a question coming there?
Well, it's interesting what you said, like with that journey, I can relate a lot in my field in the same way. What was it specifically about that one? Because you did other ones that you said were very soul filled, like with the Qigong retreats and stuff like that. But this one seemed like was it kind of just like the final kind of nail in the coffin, or was there something more with this one journey?
So I'm actually moved as a director of pharmacy to Santa Fe to study at the Mogadao Institute as archetypal Qigong and depth sexuality and Taoism and meditation and yoga and Gong Fu. Like, I was like, this is it. So like still working as director, but while doing that, changed my perception of what I could do. And also had those two like head to head every day, how I felt in my body here versus how I felt in my body in my job. And then I had so much freedom for 2 years. I was remote. And, there's so many things that converged. What finally did it was they wanted me on site 100% of the time after 2 years remote. And I realized that my freedom was vastly more important than subjecting myself to a job where my soul was dying. And so I chose freedom. And I planned my 6 month exit and sold everything and hit the road.
Yeah.
There's another part to that, but that was like I like my freedom too much.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Like it's kind of a slight lateral shift, but like when I was in, health and fitness, I managed a club where I really wasn't happy. It was a very different energy behind it. And I really loved the kind of hard style kettlebell world where it was something different. It was just a different type of mastery approach. And same thing. I went to my first one and it was just the synergy and connection with the people, with the modality of training, just the way I felt. And I came back and it was like all that quickly drained afterwards, you know? And then every year, every couple years, I would go to these events. Yep. And I'd get this like surge of energy, and you almost kind of live on that for a period of time. Be like, all right, well, I got another one in 6 months, and I'll go do that so I can handle this. And then you realize after a while, like, oh, like I'm giving up my freedom for these weekend retreats every once in a while, these week-long retreats, and how easily we can get into that, it seems, in our own life, and just kind of, you said, like, just be handcuffed, and then we're free for a week, and then we just go back into it because it's tough. It's tough to make those changes.
It is. And how we do one thing is how we do everything. I say it was like my eating disorder, binge purge. It's like, overcompensate for the pain of how we're not living our life and how we're stifled. And it's the same with like weekend drinkers, right? It's like, can we actually not live a life that sucks our vitality so that we don't have to like binge on these things? So we don't feel like we have to escape our life to feel good like we do in these events or certain people's company. Like that for me, I was like, something's really missing. And actually what really brought me there, like that was the final straw. But I think it's important to know, like when I say how you do one thing is how you do everything. I had a relational crisis summer of 2020, not like half of the world probably. And I said, I cannot do this anymore. I need to work on my shit. And so I jumped into a relationship coach training program, and it changed my life. I realized that I have needs, and that I can express my needs, express my boundaries. I learned how to be more sovereign, a sovereign human being. I learned that like what's truly valuable to me and to live according to my values. I was not living according to my values. My values being health and freedom and personal expression. And so getting really real with myself about that was super valuable.
How'd you get into that world of relationship coaching? Was it something you sought out, or was that something that just kind of came about?
Facebook ads.
There we go. They work.
I had this guy, I dated him for like 3 months, and then he just ghosted me on the eve of me moving back into town. And it just set me into like 6 weeks of grief, just crazy grief. I mean, there were, and I must have clicked on something because it said, are you dating an emotionally unavailable man or something like that? And I bought their like $7 program because I was super hurting. I was
Your
like,
iPhones are listening to you. Yes.
But then they advertised their coach training. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to really dive in. And I was looking for a pivot. I said, could I have one-on-one, deep, intimate conversations with people? Like, fuck yes. Like, that's what I love doing. So it just seemed the obvious next step for me. But it came out of like intense pain and intense desire to work on my relationships because everything else seemed like I had it pretty much under wraps.
Sure. Yeah.
But I kept falling on my face there.
It's funny, when you said fuck yes there, you saw the whole energy change in your body. So you can tell like this is where I need to be. Like it kind of comes out of every pore from that. Do you know Kelly Calabrese?
That sounds familiar, but
yeah, she did some. I've had her on the podcast before. She's in because she kind of went through something similar with a divorce, and then realized like she didn't find a program like to help her with the grief. So she actually just started learning it, and then figured out how to teach it, and just kind of built a course from it. It seemed kind of very, nice. In very kind of synergistic paths of what you had there. So I want to go back to a phrase that you said there, Dr. Amy, of disease state management. If you could define that more, because I think that's really interesting. I think we can all kind of understand maybe what that is, but how would you define what that statement means?
I love that you asked that. So first, let me say that health and healthcare are not synonymous, but we often mix the two. And so I want to frame the context so that this makes more sense. Healthcare is actually sick care, meaning it's designed to take care of sick people. It's not designed to care for our health. It's a total misnomer. And like, I don't say that with anger. I just call a spade a spade. Mm-hmm. That being said, disease state management in the medical complex world is chronic disease management, hypertension, diabetes, things that they identify as chronic disease. And they make money off that stuff. Mm-hmm. We can reverse so many disease states. So that's the medical model definition of mm-hmm. disease state management. Let's manage their disease really well. Let's mm-hmm. keep their symptoms under control so that we can hopefully reduce mortality and morbidity. Hopefully they'll live a little bit longer and have a improved quality of life. Mm-hmm. That's the very dry way they do it. Yeah. The way I see it now, having been through that and questioned everything I've learned and learned many other things that resonate better with me, is that if we are in dis-ease, we're not in ease. We're not being ourselves. We're tolerating behaviors, relationships, lifestyle, work that causes us stress, that causes depression, addiction, anxiety, and we just continue to tolerate it. That causes stress in the body, which causes chronic disease. Mm. Chronic dis-ease. And there's plenty of data out there. I don't need to go find the research. I've studied with people who have done the research, and there's plenty of data out there. So what happens when we are in flow? Flow to me is being our authentic true self, meaning our heart and our mind are aligned with who we are meant to be in this world, whatever that means. It's funny because we search for it all the time as human beings, but it just comes through us when we allow it. But when we're living according to our values, we're more in flow, we're more in ease, and we're healthier. Mm-hmm. When we live by introjected values from society, from our parents, from our educational institution or religion, those come across as I should, I could, I have to, I ought to, I need to, all of those, they're called imperatives in my world. That's not our values. Yeah. And I think that's a really good tip for people to go, oh, wait, what? Yeah. When we live by that, we are not being true to ourselves. We're not being authentic. It creates stress. It actually creates polarization in the brain, which releases stress chemicals, which over time cause disease. Right. So disease state management in my world, dis-ease, is to not tolerate dis-ease, to look at everywhere I am disempowered, where I'm mm-hmm. Tolerating, judging, complaining, blaming. All of these things are trying to put power outside of ourselves because instead of owning who we are and how we are in the world. Yeah. So there's a lot of threads I want to pull on that. It's you beautifully articulated it. It's what you talked about there with flow and with kind of peace, and how we think that that's a state that we need to find, when in reality, I remember the first time I talked with Sifu Harinder Singh on the podcast, and he gave his story, and he's a world-class martial artist and Qigong master and everything. And he said the term flow is natural. We are in our own way. And that hit me so hard from there. And the first time I heard you speak, you said something similar, where our default pattern is a healthy person.
But the narrative that we hear all the time is that there's something wrong with us. Oh, I don't feel good. What do I need to go get, like, to put into my body, or to change my makeup in here to become healthy? When in reality, it's like, no, our natural state is already healthy. But even in my own head, I was like, fuck, like that's not my thought right there. Like, I've heard the narrative before, and I do this as a profession, but how quickly that natural narrative and those imperatives, as you said, can just come into our language so freely and so easily that we don't even think that it's actually changing how we view, our own body and our own health.
Yeah. And the world and the people we interact with, right? We have that lens on the people that we interact with.
Yeah.
So,
the imperatives is interesting. I've done a lot of personal work myself on that. Actually, Brian Grasso, shout out to BG. He was the first one that kind of caught me on that when, saying the words like need, and I was saying like, I need, it's like, you don't need to do anything. It's like, if you actually think about it logically, like, no, you don't need to do anything. It's like, what's a different word? And that was really challenging to do. I did a lot of journaling work. I did a lot of writing about how to change that wording. And it's worked very well. I still catch myself doing it and almost like, wait, what's a different word I can use for this? But when you do actually practice things like that to change that, it is a really powerful shift that you realize, to do, with kind of going into some practices for people if they find themselves in this, like using these imperatives. So what are the kind of the first steps that, you would do to help somebody kind of with these things?
Oh, like just noticing the imperatives for one.
I guess that's that would be, I guess, is that the first one that kind of look at, or like,
I mean,
you work with healthcare leaders, on this, and I'm sure they're in an own narrative of probably being in this conglomerate of like, what can I do to change my own mind, and what can I do to change my practice? Like, what are those things that you do to start with working and helping someone?
I mean, it's wherever the awareness comes first, wherever they're disempowering themselves, because how we disempower ourselves is a patterned response based usually on childhood. So actually where I start is looking at our childhood patterns and our strategies. So when we're a child, a baby, or a toddler, we need attachment, and we need to be seen and heard in our expression. And when we express ourselves authentically and with innocence, and we set our boundaries, say, I don't like that. When we don't get the attachment and love and acceptance that we need, we alter our behavior. And so to get the love and attachment that we need, because our survival absolutely depends on it, that gets embedded in our nervous system. And so we then use those strategies to get and maintain connection until at some point, and like the gap between authentic and strategy is addiction, anxiety, depression, all of these things. So I first seeing what their strategy is helps, because then we can be like, okay, are you in your strategy? Like mine was to be perfect. I was the superstar student. I was like the first one to go to college. I had so much potential. Oh, I hate that word. And so I have to watch myself. Am I expecting perfection? Am I wanting to be perfect here? And can I allow myself to be messy? Can I allow myself to learn and be imperfect? And, everyone has their strategy. So that's the first one. And often in that, you have the imperatives in the language. So
it seems like I was almost like going right into tactics and ways to improve it before, like you look at the first steps, first of seeing exactly where the root cause and what's going on first before you start implementing like something to fix it.
Yeah, because we have to have awareness. I can give someone tactics, but if they're tools, but if they don't have awareness first, it ain't going to work. So wherever their awareness lies, that's where I start, and then give them tools at that point, because your awareness is going to be different based on your experiences. And reflections, and hopefully I get the opportunity, which I usually do, to help them say, oh, did you catch that? Can I reframe that? Right? Can we reframe that in a positive way? So
that's interesting. I'd love to dive deeper into the awareness aspect and kind of what that is, because I think it's personally for me, and I've seen it's like self-awareness. I know it's important, and I think I've done a lot of work on that, but still almost, it's like, what does that actually mean? Like, what am I actually looking? Because especially with people of, you're in a profession or you're in your work and you feel like you know something's off, but you don't know exactly where it is until you are there specific questions you ask? Is there a specific process that you do to kind of help somebody find that awareness?
Yeah. So presence is huge. So I've been a Vipassana meditator. I'm not actively meditating every day like I was, but just having done 2 10-day retreats, and actually a month at a retreat center in 21 changes who you are. And so the awareness is the ability to like observe ourselves. Like I could be shooting myself and shaming myself, and the ability to be like the observer is what meditation can allow. Or just quiet space. And I kind of lost the thread of where I was going. Oh, so we gain insight when we're still. And sometimes it's through movement. Like sometimes when I'm exercising, I can shut off my brain a little bit and be with my body. I have insights. But in coaching, I'm not typically out on a walk with them doing that. So knowing that in the present moment is where we gain insight and healing. The model I learned, one of the many things I've learned, but present-centered relationship coaching, is that healing happens in the here and now. So I help people be with their emotions and be with their feelings, because normally we have language, behaviors, actions that pull us away from feeling our emotions. Like we either seek something or escape from something, rather than just like be with it.
Yeah.
And so slowing people down enough to where they can witness their thoughts and then also feel what's happening in their body at the same time, they can start to gain awareness, because they've been escaping that integration. I do it. I say they, like I do it. I'm human.
Right. I'm like, in my head too, I was like, yeah, I get that totally.
I do it all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you said that, because I think that connection to the physical body and knowing what it feels like when that happens is so important. Because I think almost a natural feeling, it seems like if you feel something off, just deflect it, move it off, move it to the side. I thought the same thing with flow. Like once you think that you're in flow, you're not in flow anymore, because now you've put all this stuff in your head to kind of put you out of it. It's kind of just let it be. And just like anything, I'm sure it's a skill that you can develop. It takes some time to develop and to be aware to get yourself away from this, outside, and actually be an observer of who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can use help with that, right? Like I can actually reflect back and help someone see things sooner. And I'd be like, oh, like I saw them and stop, and they go, shit, I didn't realize I was doing that. Cool. Let's keep catching it. Let's keep reframing. Let's keep working on that edge of changing our thoughts, behaviors, and actions.
Yeah. With the people you work with healthcare leaders, people who are seeing, like even going back to your time with, being in pharmaceuticals and kind of working, the people that you worked with, is it almost, there's a thought like everybody's like, yeah, I know the system's fucked, or it's like triggered and stuff like that, but I can't do anything about it. So I'm going to kind of take care of myself. Is that like a narrative of that? Because it seems like you did, you can only do that for so long until you almost break or you almost snap.
Yeah. And I have goosebumps with you just mentioning that, because I'm remembering what a squeeze it was. So my journey I think is very similar to many, but I pushed through. So when you invest, I'll just speak for myself. I invested 10 years in college. Okay. A doctorate is 4 years, 6 years of undergrad. I had like $175,000 in student debt. And becoming a doctor means wearing the coat, taking on the persona and the responsibility of being a medical professional. Notice how I changed, like, this is how we are. And to be a good pharmacist, we need to follow the guidelines and not question authority and not question some of the data. And it takes a very independent person and a heretic, which I now proudly call myself a heretic. Mm-hmm. You get thrown out if you question anything. And, COVID put some additional pressures where I was expected to be a puppet. I was not allowed to have my say. I was not allowed to question anything, partially because I was a leader. I even, instead of being able to lead, I actually just had to be the puppet. Mm-hmm. And I understand there were certain pressures, but like everything in me screamed, this is wrong. This is going too fast. Right. And, I'm going to bring in my trauma, if that's okay with you.
Sure, please. Mm-hmm.
So it's so beautiful what happened. I had a lot of sexual trauma surface during that time. And when I say, this is going too fast, this doesn't feel right, I'm not ready for this, I don't want to do this. Like it's the same thing I had in my body, this powerlessness to advocate, to have a voice, to say no, it was taken away. And so my body, because I had sexual trauma, I didn't quite know it at the time, but I started working with a therapist. Mm-hmm. In fact, I see him today. I'm still seeing him like 2 years later, whatever. Powerlessness to my body meant life or death. And so I could really feel in my body, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right. And I didn't have the capacity, I didn't have the ability to say no without like getting shot down or fired or something. So I quit. There were other things, but it made me realize, and I bring this up because we helped patients who I believe a lot of them had violence in their history, sexual or domestic violence. And I was really curious, like, what are we doing to them? And providers too, who felt disempowered. If they have a similar physical reaction to me, what are we doing to them? We're completely disempowering everyone in this system. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, we're re-traumatizing everyone, which is increasing disease. Because re-traumatization causes stress in the body. Trauma integration dissolves that and starts to take away that stress response and starts to empower people. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm trying to take away non-definitives out of my language as well. I am taking non-definitives out of my language. Yeah. Is that there are many, many people that feel very squeezed and feel like they don't have an option. And they got into it to heal people. And it's not healing people, it's making them more sick. But they're so invested in their education and, look at me, I'm the doctor or the nurse, and I'm like so dedicated to it that they can't get out of the identity that helps them feel good and safe in the world and the strategy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It hit a bump. I got goosebumps the same way. There's a picture of me from 5 years ago or so at the old place that I worked, where there was a lot of emotional trauma that I went through from kind of that experience but it was the same thing, was there for a very long time. I built a life there. So everything on paper was like, I had the home, I had the car, I had all the things that I always wanted. And it's like I was standing on my own 2 feet in a responsibility type role. And there's a picture of me with a smile on, but I knew that what that day was, but how easily we can, I called it the mask, like how we can paint on this mask of just like, well, I've gone down this road. I've done enough. Like I can't leave now. It will get better. I can work through this. It's like,
Oh,
and that line of it, it's so funny. I just recently had a conversation with somebody about that. They're dealing with some physical pain and going to a chiro, and I'm sure the chiro is really good, but it's like, well, they're keeping it at bay. And I was like, well, is the goal just to keep it at bay for the rest of your life and just deal with this? And then you just need to push this down. And you could see in their head of what I said, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't even think of it. And I was like, oh my God, how quickly we can just, even if we are squeezed, how comfortable we can get to feeling that squeeze and make it almost feels normal after a period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially like if we've spent our whole life succumbing to that squeeze.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I go back to my childhood. I was a dancer. They supported it to an extent, but they really wanted me to go to college. There's this squeeze of like my desires and doing what I'm going to get my love for don't match. And it's no different than like, oh, I get so much accolade for being successful. So then what am I without that?
Yeah, that's Well, how quickly we can identify, right, of what it is, and when something challenges that of where we are. I mean, it's hard. It's Carrie Campbell's line of when you conclude who you are, you stop seeking. And I think there's just such a beautiful line of how to work and how to develop. It's I'm curious, Amy, because I feel like there's probably a need in some capacity for the pharmaceutical industry. Like there's some things that can be done from there. But is it just like, I guess, is the problem mostly like just immediately like people are prescribing things, or like you're immediately going in and getting it, and we're not like the approach to how we treat somebody? Is that the main issue, do you believe?
It's multifactorial. So the first issue that I see is that the medical complex, I don't want to call it healthcare, even though that's what people know it as. They look through the lens of a diagnosis. They cannot treat you. This is same with mental health. They can't treat you, which means they can't get reimbursement unless they have a diagnosis, which means they're looking for what's wrong. And a symptom is wrong, and we need to treat it with a drug. That mentality is so backwards. I started doing network spinal. It's like a fringe chiropractic practice, freaking amazing. Sometime last year. And what they look at is what's working. And they connect the dots basically in your spine. There's like, if you have a subluxation, they connect on either end what's working so that your brain can start to remap. They don't focus on the subluxation as wrong. They allow and help the body heal. And I just changed my perspective of like, everything's working for us. How can I take that perspective more? So the first problem is that it's looking at what's wrong. A symptom is a beautiful sign that our body's speaking to us that like, we're out of balance, we need help. Our job is to not mask it, kind of like our feelings. Our job is to help the body heal and listen to it. The other one is that we've made this like, overlord is coming to mind, but we've put so much power as a society in that system that we don't listen to our own bodies and our own intuition anymore. As a mass, tons of people do, but if I'm speaking generally, that is a major problem. And people are questioning more, but like putting the power of our health in someone's hands, and then also wanting a quick fix, not wanting the hard work of like doing the necessarily daily things. And the other part of that is I truly believe that, let me know if I'm not, I think I'm answering your question, but let me know if I get off topic.
Yeah, you're right on point.
Sweet. So what I realized, I was like, what is health? Because this isn't health to me, never has been. Did a functional medicine fellowship, spent 3 years, got out, and I was like, shit, like I'm still throwing pills at someone. And if they don't have a healthy home life, they don't have healthy relationships, they have unresolved trauma, like we're not there. So I truly believe that if we're not looking first at the person's nervous system and the health and resilience of their nervous system, we are not addressing their health at all. Mm. So I look at health through that lens. How is the nervous system? And from all the different angles. So I almost lost my train of thought here. When we look at it that way, okay, back up. Mm-hmm. Relationships, environmental causes, unresolved trauma, which needs community, which needs safe, secure relationship to heal. That is not the responsibility of the healthcare system. The problem is the healthcare system is trying to take on homelessness and like, let's help the homeless population and see if we can increase their health outcomes. The cost of all that, having community health workers go out and like help with activities of daily living, ADLs. Like, that's not our job. It's not healthcare's job.
Right.
They take care of sick people. I would love if we would take those issues, put it back in the hands of society, put our actual health in the hands of society, and then let them take care of the really sick people, because we are flipping amazing at that. We can sew legs back on and have people walk, like completely severed legs. But what? Like, we can put someone else's organ in their body and like they live. Like, that's flipping amazing.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Let's let them do that.
When you actually think of it that way, of like, that's fucking crazy. Like, you could take a heart from somebody, and like you see those videos of, somebody who the relatives of the person that donated the heart and gives over to the other person. It's like it's a sob story, and it's amazing, but it's like, holy shit, we took a vital organ from one person and put it into another one. That's actually crazy. Yeah. Do more of that.
And beautiful.
Yeah.
And like, let's unburden the system, mm-hmm. Put that back in the society, which is much larger and much more, I feel, capable.
Yeah.
Because we can have a different view. We don't have to look at it through diagnosis and what's wrong, which usually just goes, when you look at what's wrong, it's very narrow.
Yeah. When you talk about that with the nervous system, it's, a book I read, I think about like a year ago, from Johan Hari. It's called Lost Connections. Really hit me hard when he talked about depression and anxiety, and how one of the big things is that loss of community. It's like, it's not that you're clinically depressed and you need a chemical, issue. It's like, no, you kind of have a shitty life. Like, you need to work on your life, more, and build these connections out. But how easily we can think that something's wrong with us too. Like, I remember I had a shoulder issue for a while, and I was like, what the heck's going on with it? So I went in, I got the MRI, and it turns out like everything was fine. It was just like some inflammation. Immediately that day, everything started to feel better. It's like, just because
you had the confirmation.
Just because but how much like our mind can just play with us and just screw with us of thinking something's wrong. And that was just, I had other people, I'm sure, saying stuff, oh, it's probably a labrum issue or something like that. And then you actually go and realize, no, actually you're healthy. Like, it's a little bit off, but you're going to be fine. And I remember so much, like, oh my God, the next day was the first workout I felt in a long time that actually felt really good. It was kind of out of my mind, just that worriness and just that awareness. And as you said, it's like, if you're shopping a diagnosis, you're going to find something, probably. Like, if you're searching for it, you're going to find something.
Yeah, that what you search for, you will find.
Yeah.
Because life is all of positive and negative. Mm-hmm. And so, do we want to search for confirmation of our fears or confirmation of our dreams?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, last thing I want to ask you, because you said, about meditation, you've done retreats, and like you said, like, I'm not practicing personally right now. And is that something that, when you go into your own practices for self-care for your health, are you very intuitive with your approach right now? Do you follow like a specific pattern of routine? Mm-hmm. Because I'm always curious about that, because I think often we can get into routines, but then if we start relying on them and we're not being aware of them, then it seems like we're just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah. I think everyone needs to find their way. And I will say that currently, so in the past, I was a triathlete, hardcore student, ballerina, bodybuilder, you name it. And my discipline came from cracking the whip on myself and shoulding and guilt. And, occasionally it'd be from joy. But for the most part, I was very used to self-flagellation as a way of disciplining myself into action. And so I've gone through about 3 years now of what happens if I let that go, and can my discipline come from joy? So I'm still like figuring that out, because I think discipline is very valuable, but I really, really want it to come from a place of joy and self-celebration, and joy for what I'm doing versus like, oh, I should be going to the gym. Like, okay, if I want this X outcome, probably.
Right.
But so I don't have a definitive answer on that, but ideally it comes from joy and intuition. Like when the shit hits the fan emotionally for me, my intuition is, Amy, sit on the pillow. Your mind is spinning. Slow down. Sit on the pillow. And then it's like, oh yeah. Oh yeah, that. Like,
right?
So would it be better to
the answer's so far? You think the answer's so far off, right? When in reality, it takes a minute to slow. I love that you brought the term joy in there. I had a good friend, Tim Almond. He was asking me. This was a while ago, and Tim's an unbelievable coach out of Australia, and he asked me something about that with routine. He's like, is there joy in your training? And I remember when he said that, and I was just like, what are you talking about? It's like, cause it's the same, it's that discipline type mindset. I think discipline is it's a valuable thing, and everybody needs it. Like, you need to build that up, but then eventually you get to that level where you need to build your intuition, and you need to do things kind of for the love of the game, for lack of a better cliche.
Yeah. And actually I study a lot with Dr. Demartini, and being in flow, when we're doing what we absolutely love and enjoy and what lights us up, we're super disciplined.
Yeah.
Innately.
Yeah. You just don't think of it as discipline.
Right. Mm-hmm. So can we find more of that in our lives and foster that, and not think like, oh, there's a deficiency. So then, it's like, then I can have discipline in other areas because it supports my highest value. Then it makes sense. Because you're like, oh, this is going to help me feel even better in this area or do better in this area. So, okay, I'll, work out X times a week or something, but that's not my highest value. Yeah.
I love that. I love that answer. That's a perfect closeout right there. Dr. Amy, I really appreciate it. I'd love to have you back and continue this conversation with you. Yeah. So I really appreciate you coming on, speaking with me, and I love your approach. So keep doing what you're doing. And again, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You got a lot of stuff going on. You got a lot of work. If people want to follow what you do, kind of check you out, where's the best place that they can see your stuff?
Amy RX Baker on Instagram and pretty much anywhere, but I'm most active there. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah. Dr. Amy, thank you so much. Listeners, thank you so much. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.